Hi, I'm Clover. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 things that you can start doing if you're just starting your financial journey and you're wanting to start building wealth and reaching financial independence. The tips I'll share today are things that anybody can do. By the end of this video, you'll have a very clear idea of how to get started on your personal finance journey. You'll know exactly what your next steps are, and you'll even have an idea of what to do over the next couple of next steps. But first, be sure to hit like and hit subscribe so that you can continue to see content from me. It helps me out a lot. It's free to you, and as you probably know, only 50% of my viewers are actually subscribers, so if everybody started hitting subscribe, I'd be in so much better place. So thank you so much, and let's get to it. All right, so the very first thing that you need to do when you're starting off on your personal finance journey is you have to get really clear on why you want to manage your money in the first place. If you don't have a really clear and pretty sexy vision of what it is you want to do with your money, it's really going to be hard to stay the course throughout the journey of your financial independence journey. The thing is, building wealth and becoming financially independent is something that takes a lot of time. So your why really needs to resonate with you on a deep level. It shouldn't include all these shoulds and must to, and I guess I'm doing this because I'm supposed to do it. Instead, it should be something that resonates with you on a really deep way and even in an emotional way, so that you feel pulled to it in the same way that you would any other dream or goal or thing that you need to have discipline in for the long term. One way to think about it, if you're not totally clear on what your why is picture how your life would be different if you were financially independent or if money were not an issue for you. This will help you to discover some of the components in your life that you want to have, and knowing those components will help you stay the course when you're managing your money, because you know that if you're good with your money now, if you start saving, if you start investing, you'll be able to start incorporating those things more and more into your life, whether it's more travel, whether it's more time off, whether it's funding your children's education, whatever it is, knowing that that's what you're working towards rather than just assuming you're budgeting just to budget because you're supposed to budget is a whole lot more powerful than just budgeting to budget. A few good questions to ask yourself are, how do I see myself spending my free time when money no longer is an issue? How do I want to feel about money? What do I want to do in the mornings? What do I want to do in the afternoons? What do I want to do in the evenings? What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Spend some time really thinking about what your why is, because this is probably the most important part of your journey in order to have a clear vision of where you're going. Because ultimately, if you don't know where you're going, who knows where you're going to end up? All right, the second thing you need to do, which is very similar to the why, is you need to set some goals for yourself. So after you've figured out your why, can we break it down into a couple of different goals? So when I say a couple of different goals, I mean, let's put a time frame on it. So we know our long-term goal is X. Now, what can we do this year in order to get closer to achieving that goal? And then once you know what you need to do this year, maybe you need to save $10,000 this year. Maybe you need to finally get an emergency fund this year. Maybe you're going to finally learn how to start investing. Whatever it is, break it down into even smaller chunks. So break it down into, what am I going to do quarterly, as in what am I going to do over the next 12 weeks in order to achieve this yearly goal? And then break it down into months. So now that you know your quarterly goal, what are you going to do every single month in order to make sure you're reaching that quarterly goal, which will then help you reach your yearly goal? And then you can even break it down into weeks and days. Setting goals this way really helps build onto your successes. So once you succeed at achieving that daily goal, it makes it so much easier to achieve that weekly goal. And once you achieve that weekly goal, it's so much easier to achieve that monthly goal. They just stack on top of each other until all of a sudden a year later, you've realized you've achieved the goal that you set out for yourself, and it was really natural. It was really just part of your everyday habits. If it's a financial goal, let's say you want to save $12,000 in a year. Well, your quarterly goal is you want to save $3,000 every quarter. Then your monthly goal, you want to save $1,000 every month. So see how that kind of takes this big idea and breaks it down into little chunks? It makes it a whole lot easier to achieve those goals. Now, the third thing you need to do is you need to get a general idea of where your money is going every month. And in order to do this, you have to take a look at your spending. So you you can either do this by tracking your spending for the next 3 months and averaging it out. And what I mean by that is you literally write down every day what you spend your money on, and at the end of 3 months, you take that total number and you divide it by 3 to get your monthly average, to get a general idea of what you're spending. You'll also want to divide it into categories. So you'll want to see how much money you're spending on eating out, how much money you're spending on groceries, how much money you're spending on shopping or random things, and kind of get an idea of what those total categories are for you. The reason that this is important is because this is where you're going to start finding where there's extra money available to dedicate to other things. So let's say one of your goals was saving $1,000 a month. Well, once we take a look at our average spend monthly on different categories, you're going to see, okay, where's my money and where do I want it to go? I know I want to make $1,000 somewhere in my spending and I want to dedicate it to other things. So how do I find that? A lot of times you'll see that you're spending more in eating out, or you're spending more on random things, or you have subscriptions that you didn't even know you had. And the reason that we're doing this practice is so that you can see that and then decide, you know what, instead of spending $300 a month on eating out, I'm only going to spend $150 a month on eating out, so that I can then dedicate that $150 to my larger goals, to my savings goals, to my investing goals, whatever that may be. Now, the fourth thing that you need to do is you're going to use these numbers to create a budget. And now, I hope I didn't lose you already, but you don't have to create a budget where you have to track everything. You can do an anti-budget where basically you take the essential expenses that you have and you add your goals into it, and then everything left over is stuff that you can just spend without having to track it. But you can also do a zero-based budget, which is what I like. I have a video on how to make a zero-based budget here, so you can use that in order to make your zero-based budget. Either way, though, you're going to want to have some kind of a spending plan so that you can meet those goals that you set for yourself. I have found that budgeting and using budgets is actually a lot more freeing than not having a budget at all. I think a lot of times people think that budgets are just completely strict and restrictive and they're not fun, but I have found that I have less anxiety, less guilt, less worry, and feel less restricted when I'm using a budget, because I know I've already accounted for my goals. I know I'm making sure that my money is working for me. So any spending that I do after that, I cannot worry about. Now, the fifth tool that everybody needs in their personal finance arsenal is an emergency fund. And if 2020 didn't teach you that you need an emergency fund, I'm really not sure what will. But an emergency fund is so important because it will help keep you out of high interest debt. And high interest debt is really the one that we try to avoid because it's so difficult to get out of. When you're paying 20% in interest on purchases of things that you've bought a while ago or from consumer debt, it's really difficult to get out of that because 20% is such a high interest rate. So if we're able to prevent getting into high interest debt in the first place, that's the best way to handle it. An emergency fund will really help prevent ever having to get into debt when an unexpected expense arises, because ultimately unexpected expenses are always going to arise. That's just how being an adult works. So having an emergency fund to cover those expenses so that you don't have to use credit cards is going to be so important to your financial well-being over the years, and also just important to your mental health and well-being, because you know that if something happens, you're covered. Now, number 6, we're going to start investing. So first, we're going to start with our retirement accounts. Now, the 401k match you should be getting anyway, whether or not you have high interest debt, whether or not you have an emergency fund, get that 401k match because that's free money and it's really part of your salary. So if you are turning that down, you're turning down money that's supposed to be part of your salary anyway, and you wouldn't want to do that. So after you have your emergency fund in place and you're already getting that 401k match, then you want to start investing in an IRA, and preferably a Roth IRA for most people. The reason I suggest investing in retirement accounts before you go straight to a taxable brokerage account like Robinhood or Ellevest or Wealthfront is because you're going to save money on taxes, and all of our biggest expenses in life are taxes. If you're able to save money on taxes, that's a huge amount of money that's guaranteed return on your investment. You're guaranteed to save that money on taxes by putting it into a Roth IRA, an IRA, or even a 401k. So start with your retirement accounts. If you want to learn more about the individual retirement accounts, then check out my videos here. I'll also leave some links down below on 401ks, IRAs, and Roth IRAs. But essentially 401ks usually usually are pre-tax dollars that you put into your account, so you usually pull that money out in retirement and have to pay taxes on it then, but you get tax cuts in the year that you contribute because it lowers your taxable income. Traditional IRAs, you pay taxes in retirement as well. Usually the money that you put in is post-tax, but your gains that you make in the market, you do have to pay taxes on when you withdraw that money in retirement. And then there are Roth IRAs where you already paid taxes, so because you put in post-tax dollars, and so you do not have to pay taxes in retirement at all. Your investments grow tax-free, which is pretty great. Once you've maxed out your retirement accounts, you've put the $6,000 into your IRA, you've put in the $19,500 into your 401k, then is a good time to start investing in other accounts like a taxable brokerage account. Now, I still prefer the same accounts to invest in that I prefer for my IRA. So I still use Vanguard and Fidelity even for my taxable brokerage, but I also use Vanguard for my IRA and I use Fidelity for my 401k. I like these options because they are very low cost and they're just historically really great brokerages. Vanguard specifically was founded by Jack Bogle, who really wanted to make sure that Vanguard was an affordable option for people to start investing in. There's no hidden fees, and for the most part, they have some of the best options when it comes to index funds and index ETFs. And then number 7 is pay off any high interest debt. Now, I put this after investing because I want to emphasize that even if you have high interest debt, you should be getting your 401k match, period. It's free money. But you should not be investing beyond that match if you have high interest credit card debt. So high interest credit card debt is really anything that's above 5 or 6%. The reason that experts do not necessarily recommend that you invest if you have high interest debt is because the money that you're making in the market is probably going to be canceled out by the amount of interest that you're paying in this high interest debt. So if you have high interest debt, after you have your emergency fund in place, focus on paying off as much as possible on that high interest debt so that you can start using that money for other things like investing. If you want to know how to pay off your high interest debt as quickly as possible, I also have a video on that. So I'll leave a link here and then I'll also leave a link down in the description below. So that's pretty much it. Those are my 7 tips on how to get started in your personal finance journey. Generally, you want to make sure that you know why you're doing it. You want to set some goals. You want to create a budget and track your spending so that you have a baseline of what you're already spending. And then you want to get together an emergency fund and you want to start investing. And then you want to also pay off your high interest debt. So those are the tips that I give beginners, and hopefully that helped you out and you have a clear idea of what to do next. But if you have any questions, leave me any questions down in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer those or make another video post on answering any of those questions. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe if you want to keep seeing content by me about money. So thanks again. I'll see you guys next time.